Passengers with their noses buried in mobile phones not talking is a common sight on subways around the world. It often means that people don't always realise that someone in need is standing nearby. But Tokyo's famously packed transit system has found a way to take advantage of this and make commuting easier for mothers-to-be. A matchmaking app is being trialled to connect women with nearby passengers willing to give up their coveted seats. A promotional video shows how the app works. A pregnant woman struggling to bag a seat links with willing riders via a special account on the messaging app Line. They send a note saying they want to sit down. The generous pre-registered user then receives an alert on their phones telling them the pregnant woman's location. The service comes at a time when Japan faces low birth rates and is trying to make life easier for mothers. The company also hoped to roll out the app to help elderly and disabled people.
Last week's deal to move on to the next phase of Brexit talks is good news for both the Leave and Remain camps. That's according to the UK Prime Minister. However, Theresa May has told Parliament that the proposal depends entirely on how future talks play out.
Commitment to maintain the common travel area with Ireland. This offer is on the table in the context of us agreeing the partnership for the future, agreeing the next stage and agreeing the partnership for the future. If we don't agree that partnership, then this offer is off the table.
The UK government is also to grant lawmakers more oversight of the process of severing ties with the EU. A spokesman for the Prime Minister says the concession will be incorporated into the EU withdrawal bill, the legislation that forms a central plank of May's Brexit strategy. Analysts say this is to head off a potential rebellion in Parliament.
In Austria, at least one person has been killed and up to 18 others hurt in a blast at a major gas plant in Baumgarten. The explosion occurred around 8:45 local time this morning, and the cause is still under investigation. Baumgarten is one of Europe's key principal distribution centres for gas arriving from Russia and Norway. Gas piped through the plant is mostly supplied to Italy and southern Germany.
The German Chancellor Angela Merkel has condemned all anti-Semitic acts such as burning of Israeli flags following demonstrations in Berlin over the weekend. We strongly condemn each form of anti-Semitism and xenophobia. No dispute on Jerusalem's status justifies such a behaviour. The state has to intervene with all means that it possesses. Around 2,500 people demonstrated in reaction to Donald Trump's announcement that the US government would recognize Jerusalem as Israel's capital. On Friday, hundreds of people gathered outside the US embassy in Berlin for Day of Rage protests called for by Palestinian and Hamas authorities. Joseph Schuster, head of the Central Council of Jews in Germany, has called for the immediate dissolution of any demonstration where Jewish symbols are defiled. More than 70 years after World War II, in which Germany killed 6 million Jews, anti-Semitism remains a sensitive issue in the country. Germany considers itself to be one of Israel's closest diplomatic allies.
In a ransacked ghost town strewn with signs of lives interrupted, Li Yuanrong is packing up. After 10 years of living here, she has only one day to clear out. We have no choice but to obey, she told us. Like Li, thousands of Chinese migrants are being evicted, many given little notice by police. In a massive housing crackdown following a deadly fire at a migrant settlement last month. Entire city blocks condemned. Roughly 20 square miles of buildings will be leveled.
Here where the fire was, it is wide-scale destruction with these vast fields of rubble and debris and more buildings about to be demolished.
China's government says it's about safety, but many suspect it's population control, an effort to force the poor out of a city they helped build from land that has soared in value. The city depends on an estimated 8 million migrants to do the low-paying jobs that keep it running. I've done so many jobs here, she says. How can I not feel upset? The mass eviction struck a nerve on social media here, that the Communist Party would encourage migrants to pursue the China dream, only to force them out in freezing weather. But any discussion of it was pulled down by censors. Meanwhile, migrants feel as abandoned as the buildings around them. Our China dream is destroyed, he says. And all of the demolition work, tearing down that dream, that will be done by migrants. Janice Mackey-Freyer, NBC News, Beijing.
New York police believe this is the moment the city's latest terror attacker was caught on CCTV exploding his homemade bomb. The suspect was injured and taken to hospital. His device, a pipe bomb, was strapped to his body with Velcro and zips but did not fully ignite. He's been identified as 27-year-old Akayed Ullah, a Bangladeshi immigrant. 3 other people suffered minor wounds in the blast. President Trump said the attack emphasizes the need for immigration reforms.
We do know, and the Department of Homeland Security has confirmed, that the suspect was admitted to the United States after presenting a passport displaying an F-43 family immigrant visa in 2011. And so we know that the president's policy calls for an end to chain migration, which is what this individual came to the United States through. And if his policy had been in place, then that attacker would not have been allowed to come in the country.
The FBI has said the motive for the attack is still unknown. It's not clear if the suspect was inspired or had any links to jihadists. The Port Authority bus terminal where the attack took place is the biggest and busiest in the world.
2 years after the landmark Paris Climate Accord, dozens of world leaders are back in the French capital for a summit where they're being urged to put their money where their mouth is and help poorer countries deal with the impact of climate change. President Macron hopes the world will rise to the challenge posed by the U.S. withdrawal from the deal.
The decision of President Trump just to leave the Paris Agreement was the very beginning of a new story. And I do believe that's our collective chance. It created a huge momentum.
Yet developing countries say rich nations are falling short of their pledge to provide $100 billion a year by 2020 to help them switch from fossil fuels to greener energy sources and adapt to rising temperatures and increasingly erratic weather. Meanwhile, in central Paris, environmental activists kept up the pressure with a demonstration calling for an end to all investment in oil, gas and non-renewable resources.
Russian President Vladimir Putin has ended a one-day, three-nation tour with a stop in Ankara. There he joined President Recep Tayyip Erdogan in criticizing the US over Jerusalem. Both warned the US that recognition of the city as Israel's capital risks escalating tensions in the region. Russia assumes that any peace agreement has to be built on previous decisions under the UN. Specific details on the status of Jerusalem is a subject for direct talks between Palestine and Israel. President Erdogan also condemned Israel over recent Palestinian deaths. Israel, he said, sees the recent developments as an opportunity to increase pressure and violence against Palestinians. It's not possible for anyone with a conscience, morals or principles to ignore these murders. The meeting between the two leaders was their 8th this year. Discussions also included developments in Syria, strengthening economic ties and Turkey's purchase of a Russian-made missile defense system which has annoyed NATO.
In televidente, momento para um espaço comercial no nosso back e deporte.